Hollywood once sold an image of perfection, but behind the glamorous photographs were women whose lives were anything but simple. Some became immortal through a single performance. Others fought studios, survived scandal, battled personal hardship, or discovered talents the industry never expected. And a few left behind mysteries that still refuse to disappear. Tonight, we're going beyond the famous faces and measurements to uncover the stories hidden behind them, beginning with a woman whose beauty was only the smallest part of what made her extraordinary. Actor 1 Hedy Lamarr. For decades, Hollywood remembered Hedy Lamarr as the most beautiful woman in the world. But that description barely scratches the surface of a life that was far more extraordinary than any movie poster suggested. Born Hedwig Kiesler in Vienna, Lamarr first shocked European audiences with the controversial film Ecstasy. Her early life was already filled with danger and restrictions, and she eventually escaped an oppressive marriage to arms dealer Fritz Mandl. According to the source, she disguised herself as a maid and boarded a train, beginning the journey that would ultimately lead her toward Hollywood. MGM brought her to America, where studio executives carefully reshaped her public image. The provocative European actress was transformed into an elegant Hollywood star, and audiences were captivated by her appearance. Her luminous face became her greatest selling point, particularly in films such as Algiers and Samson and Delilah. But while Hollywood focused on her appearance, Lamarr's mind was working on something entirely different. Away from the cameras, she experimented with technology. Working with composer George Entile, she developed and patented a frequency-hopping communication system designed to help prevent enemy forces from interfering with signals used to guide World War II torpedoes. At the time, the significance of the invention was not fully appreciated by Hollywood, or by much of the wider world. Her reputation remained dominated by glamour while her technological achievement faded into the background. Decades later, that changed. Her work became recognized as an important foundation for technologies associated with modern wireless communication, including Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. In 1997, she received the Electronic Frontier Foundation's Pioneer Award, long after Hollywood had stopped defining her identity. By then, Lamarr's financial circumstances were far less glamorous than her old screen image suggested. Yet her legacy had expanded far beyond cinema. She had demonstrated something Hollywood rarely expected from a glamorous leading lady: beauty and intellect could exist in exactly the same person. That 35.5-inch figure may have filled magazine covers, but it was her imagination that ultimately traveled furthest. And if Hedy Lamarr proved that Hollywood could completely misunderstand the woman behind the image, the next story reveals something even darker: the story of a child star whose brilliance survived fame, scrutiny, and a mysterious death that still fuels questions today. Actor 2 Natalie Wood. Long before Hollywood knew Natalie Wood as a major dramatic actress, audiences knew her as a child. Born Natasha Zakharino to Russian-Ukrainian immigrants, Wood entered the entertainment industry remarkably young. By the age of 5, she was already working beneath studio lights, developing the precision and discipline that would eventually define her career. Her breakthrough came with Miracle on 34th Street, where she played little Susan Walker. The film became a beloved Christmas classic, and Wood quickly became one of Hollywood's most recognizable young performers. But unlike many child stars who struggled to escape the image that made them famous, Wood refused to remain trapped there. As she grew older, 20th Century Fox placed her alongside some of the industry's biggest names, including James Stewart and Bette Davis. These experiences gave her an education that no acting school could easily reproduce. Then came the transformation. In Rebel Without a Cause, Wood demonstrated that the little girl from Miracle on 34th Street had become a serious dramatic performer. At only 17, she received an Oscar nomination, an extraordinary achievement that signaled the beginning of a new phase in her career. West Side Story and Splendor in the Grass followed, and Wood became closely associated with stories of youthful longing, emotional conflict, romance, and heartbreak. But behind the image of the glamorous young actress was an intensely disciplined professional. Colleagues remembered how seriously she approached her work. She reportedly studied directors' instructions carefully, hit her marks precisely, and work scenes until every detail felt right. Her screen performances might appear effortless, but that apparent naturalism was built through preparation. The press, however, was fascinated by other parts of her life. Her romances attracted constant attention, while her well-known fear of dark water became another recurring detail in the public narrative surrounding her. Then, in 1981, everything changed. Natalie Wood died in a mysterious drowning, and the circumstances surrounding her death have continued to generate speculation for decades. Her death transformed the story of her life from that of a successful actress into something more haunting. Yet focusing only on the mystery would diminish what she accomplished. Wood had successfully crossed one of Hollywood's most difficult boundaries. She had grown from a beloved child performer into an acclaimed adult actress without losing the emotional connection that audiences had formed with her. Her career was tragically short, but the combination of innocence, determination, and extraordinary acting ability made her impossible to forget. And that brings us to another star whose extraordinary voice came from a life filled with pressures that audiences could never see from the front row. Actor 3 Judy Garland. Judy Garland possessed something no costume designer could create, and no studio executive could manufacture: a voice capable of turning vulnerability into pure emotion. Born Frances Gumm, Garland began performing with her sisters on the vaudeville circuit before MGM recognized the potential of the young singer. She was small in stature, but her vocal power was enormous. The studio system, however, came with a devastating price. According to the source, studio doctors gave Garland stimulants to keep her working and barbiturates to make her sleep. The cycle began during her youth and would become a burden that followed her throughout her life. Yet the pain that surrounded Garland somehow became part of the emotional force of her performances. Few moments demonstrate that better than Dorothy's rendition of "Over the Rainbow." What might have been simply another musical number became an expression of longing so convincing that generations of viewers continue to respond to it. MGM built some of its most memorable musicals around her. Meet Me in St. Louis, Easter Parade, and Summer Stock showcased Garland's extraordinary ability to combine comedy, music, movement, and emotion. On screen, she could appear completely radiant. Behind that image, however, her personal struggles continued. After leaving the studio system, Garland made one of her greatest comebacks with A Star Is Born. The performance earned her an Oscar nomination and produced another unforgettable musical moment with The Man That Got Away. Her ability to communicate emotion was remarkable. Her eyes could suggest uncertainty, her trembling shoulders could reveal vulnerability, yet her voice remained controlled and powerful. Then came 1961. Garland's Carnegie Hall concert became a landmark performance and set a new standard for live recordings. Even after years of personal difficulty, she could still walk onto a stage and command an audience. Her legacy eventually placed her at number 22 on Premiere's list of greatest movie stars and number 8 among AFI's Screen Legends. Those rankings tell only part of the story. Garland's importance was never really about measurements, appearance, or conventional Hollywood perfection. Her power came from the contrast between fragility and strength. She could look vulnerable and sound invincible. And while Garland fought battles behind the scenes, the next actress fought Hollywood itself, using intelligence, independence, and sheer determination to challenge the system that controlled her career. Actor 4 Olivia de Havilland. Olivia de Havilland entered Hollywood as an elegant leading lady, but her most important contribution may have happened away from the camera. Her early career included A Midsummer Night's Dream and a famous series of swashbuckling adventures with Errol Flynn, beginning with Captain Blood and continuing through the adventures of Robin Hood. Hollywood had a formula for actresses like her. She was repeatedly offered ingenue roles, and the studio system expected performers to accept whatever parts were assigned to them. But de Havilland wanted more. The problem was that Warner Brothers possessed enormous control over her career. She eventually challenged the studio's practice of extending contracts through periods of suspension. Rather than simply accepting the system, she took her grievance all the way to the California Supreme Court. The resulting 1944 de Havilland decision became a landmark in Hollywood labor history. The ruling meant actors could no longer be kept under contract indefinitely by adding suspension periods to the traditional 7-year limit. The consequences extended far beyond one actress. De Havilland had effectively challenged one of the mechanisms through which studios controlled performers, creating a precedent that benefited actors who came after her. And once she had won that battle, her acting career continued to prove that her ambition had never been misplaced. She earned Academy Awards for To Each His Own and The Heiress, demonstrating the dramatic range that studio executives had previously underestimated. She ultimately lived to 104, receiving tributes on both sides of the Atlantic. Her legacy therefore has two dimensions. There was Olivia de Havilland, the accomplished actress whose performances earned major awards. And there was Olivia de Havilland, the woman who was willing to challenge the system that employed her. Her story is a reminder that sometimes the most important battle in Hollywood happens before the cameras begin rolling. But the next woman didn't fight the studio system in court. She fought something even more personal, an industry determined to turn her into a symbol, while her own life was unfolding like a film far more dramatic than anything she performed on screen. Actor 5 Lana Turner. The famous story begins with a soda fountain. Lana Turner became associated with the legendary tale that she was discovered while drinking a soda at Schwab's pharmacy. The source notes, however, that the reality was more complicated. The teenager already dreamed of becoming an actress. Still, that encounter helped launch the MGM career of one of Hollywood's most recognizable stars. Turner was quickly transformed into a screen attraction, eventually earning the nickname, the Sweater Girl. The label sold tickets, but it also became a burden when Turner wanted audiences to recognize that there was more to her than appearance. Her career nevertheless flourished. She became especially effective in stories where an apparently ordinary woman was pulled toward darker circumstances. The Postman Always Rings Twice became one of the defining examples, with Turner demonstrating that glamour could coexist with danger and emotional intensity. Off-screen, however, her life often seemed just as dramatic. Turner married 7 times, and the public followed her relationships with extraordinary fascination. Then came one of the most shocking episodes associated with her name. Her daughter, Cheryl, stabbed Turner's violent boyfriend, Johnny Stompanato, in what was described in the source as self-defense. The incident became a massive public scandal, but Turner continued working. That resilience became one of the defining features of her career. Even when newspapers were filled with stories about her personal life, she continued showing up professionally and performing her responsibilities on set. By the 1980s, Turner had entered a different era of entertainment, appearing on the primetime soap Falcon Crest and introducing her familiar glamour to a younger generation. Her career had survived changing fashions, changing audiences, and an enormous amount of personal scrutiny. Turner's story ultimately challenges the idea of Golden Age stars as untouchable figures preserved behind studio gates. They weren't porcelain figures. They were people who endured complicated relationships, public scandals, career pressures, and private pain, while still being expected to look perfect whenever the camera turned toward them. And if Lana Turner represented Hollywood glamour surviving personal turmoil, the next woman turned glamour itself into a form of rebellion. Actor 6 Faye Dunaway. Faye Dunaway did not enter Hollywood to become another beautiful face in the crowd. She arrived with something far more dangerous: ambition, discipline, and an unwillingness to make herself smaller for anyone. Born the daughter of a Florida sharecropper, Dunaway eventually studied drama at Boston University before stepping into the world of professional acting. Her breakthrough came with Bonnie and Clyde, where she played Bonnie Parker with a combination of vulnerability and danger that immediately separated her from conventional leading ladies. The beret, the attitude, the confidence, everything about the performance became iconic. But the image of effortless sophistication concealed an actress who worked relentlessly. Dunaway prepared intensely. She annotated scripts, practiced dialects, and approached performances with a level of concentration that could make the atmosphere around her extremely demanding. Her reputation for challenging co-stars became part of the mythology surrounding her career. And then came the roles that transformed her from rising star into one of the defining actresses of her generation. Chinatown. Network. 3 Days of the Condor. Her performances brought major recognition, including Oscars, Golden Globes, and BAFTA attention. Critics admired her striking appearance, but her greatest strength was never simply her face. It was the force behind it. Dunaway's memoir Looking for Gatsby revealed another side of that confidence. Beneath the controlled exterior were insecurities, stage fright, anxiety about being trapped in a particular type of role, and an intense desire to be taken seriously as an artist. That contradiction made her fascinating. The woman audiences saw seemed completely in control. The actress behind the image was constantly questioning whether she was doing enough. Years later, Dunaway unexpectedly found herself back at the center of Hollywood attention during the infamous 2017 Academy Awards envelope mistake. A moment that lasted only seconds became a worldwide story, adding another unforgettable chapter to her already remarkable career. Even in her 70s, she remained part of the fashion and entertainment conversation, appearing in a Gucci campaign that introduced her unmistakable cinematic presence to another generation. Dunaway's career demonstrates that commanding presence isn't created by physical proportions. It comes from concentration, intelligence, and the ability to hold the audience's attention whenever the spotlight arrives. But the next actress possessed a different kind of power, one built not on icy control, but on warmth, vulnerability, and a voice that could make millions of people stop and listen. Actress 7 Ingrid Bergman. Ingrid Bergman's rise began far from Hollywood's brightest lights. Orphaned young in Stockholm, she pursued acting on the stage before director Gustav Molander cast her in Intermezzo. That film was later remade in English, creating the opportunity for American audiences to discover a performer whose natural appearance and understated style were very different from the glamorous image Hollywood usually manufactured. Bergman resisted that machinery. She refused to pluck her eyebrows and avoided heavy makeup. Instead of transforming herself into an artificial screen goddess, she allowed her natural features and acting to carry the performance. That choice became revolutionary. Then came Casablanca. As Ilsa, Bergman created one of cinema's most enduring romantic figures. Her performance combined elegance with emotional restraint, and the film permanently connected her name with one of Hollywood's most beloved stories. But Bergman was never satisfied with simply repeating what worked. She wanted difficult material. Gaslight brought her an Academy Award. The Bells of St. Mary's earned another nomination. And then her personal life collided dramatically with her career. Her romance with Italian director Roberto Rossellini created a scandal so severe that Bergman was effectively pushed away from American screens. For a star who had seemed almost untouchable, the reversal was extraordinary. But exile did not end her career. Bergman returned triumphantly with Anastasia, winning her second Academy Award. She continued moving between European art cinema and major Hollywood productions, refusing to let one industry define the boundaries of her talent. Eventually came her third Oscar for Murder on the Orient Express. Her final major role, as Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir, earned her an Emmy and provided a fitting conclusion to a career built around transformation. Bergman's journey mattered because she repeatedly chose authenticity over convenience. At one point, Hollywood considered her 34-inch figure and naturally substantial appearance less suited to the traditional ingenue ideal. Yet the qualities that once made her different eventually became part of the blueprint for modern leading women. She had beauty, but beauty was never the entire story. She had controversy, but controversy did not destroy her. And most importantly, she kept choosing roles that demanded something from her. The next star took a completely different path. She stepped onto a musical stage with a dancer's discipline, and turned movement itself into her signature. Actor 8 Sid Charisse. Sid Charisse seemed to glide rather than walk. Standing 5 feet 6 inches tall with a 34.5-inch figure, she brought an extraordinary combination of elegance, athleticism, and classical dance training to Hollywood musicals. Her roots were in ballet, and that training became the foundation of her screen career. When she appeared in Singin' in the Rain, audiences saw the kind of physical control that could make choreography appear effortless. Later, she partnered with Fred Astaire in the band Wagon, where her long legs, precision, and graceful movement seemed to redefine what a Hollywood musical could look like. But the musical genre eventually began to fade. Charisse adapted. Instead of allowing changing studio fashions to end her career, she moved into television variety programs and Las Vegas productions. She frequently performed alongside her husband Tony Martin, and the pair became known as one of Hollywood's enduring couples. Her versatility continued beyond performance. During the 1980s, Charisse became associated with dance exercise videos, showing that the discipline that had once powered her movie career could translate into a completely different era of entertainment. In 2006, she received the National Medal of Arts. By then, the physical elegance that had once made her a musical star had become part of a much larger legacy. Charisse herself joked about her extraordinary physique, but the deeper truth was that her body was an instrument she had trained relentlessly. Her silhouette represented athleticism as much as glamour. And that's what made her different. Some stars became famous because the camera loved them. Charisse became unforgettable because she knew exactly what to do when the camera started rolling. But the next actress took physical performance in an entirely different direction. Her career was built around music, sensuality, comedy, and a comeback that followed one of the most devastating injuries imaginable. Actor 9 Ann-Margret. Ann-Margret Olsen arrived in American popular culture like a spark hitting gasoline. Swedish-born, she possessed a distinctive combination of a powerful voice, physical energy, and a screen presence that seemed impossible to ignore. Comedy legend George Burns discovered her, and almost immediately her career accelerated. The source describes her receiving both a recording contract and a film contract in the same week, a sign of just how quickly Hollywood recognized her potential. Then came Bye Bye Birdie. Suddenly, Ann-Margret was everywhere. Her youthful energy turned her into a defining screen presence of the 1960s. Working with Elvis Presley in Viva Las Vegas added another layer to her image, connecting her to the rock and roll culture exploding around her. But Ann-Margret wanted more than the sex kitten label. She proved it with Carnal Knowledge, taking on darker material and earning an Academy Award nomination. Then, in 1972, her life nearly changed forever. A stage accident left her with a shattered jaw. It was a devastating injury for any performer, and particularly brutal for an actress whose career depended so heavily on physical performance. But Ann-Margret refused to disappear. Within months, she returned to work. The pain, swelling, and physical damage were concealed beneath costumes and makeup as she continued performing. Later, her role in Tommy earned another Oscar nomination, confirming that her career had moved far beyond the image with which she first became famous. She continued working through dramas, comedies, television productions, and Hallmark movies. Even decades later, her name remained instantly recognizable. Empire eventually placed her at number 10 on its list of sexiest stars, but the people who worked with her remembered something more personal: her kindness, her habit of sending thank you notes to crew members, and her willingness to continue practicing choreography long after others had stopped. That combination, discipline beneath glamour, explains her longevity. Her 35-inch figure may have helped define an era, but it was the resilience underneath that allowed her to survive several of them. And the next woman took the idea of being underestimated to another level. Hollywood saw her beauty first. History eventually remembered something much bigger: an actress who helped change the future of wireless technology. Actor 10 Rita Hayworth. Rita Hayworth understood better than most actresses how completely Hollywood could reinvent a woman. She was born Margarita Cancino into a family of Spanish-Irish dancers and entered the family act at only 8 years old. Her dancing eventually attracted studio attention, but Hollywood wanted more than talent, it wanted transformation. Her hairline was altered and her naturally dark hair was dyed auburn. Margarita Cancino became Rita Hayworth. The transformation worked. Hayworth became one of the great glamour icons of the 1940s, and her performance in Gilda created one of the most enduring images in cinema. The satin black dress, the movement of her hair, and the controlled sensuality of her performance turned her into a symbol of danger and desire. She later appeared in CoverGirl and Pal Joey, further strengthening her position as one of Hollywood's defining stars. During World War II, her image also became part of the culture of wartime pin-ups. But fame came with a price. Hayworth's career was heavily shaped by studio control, and her personal life became equally public. Her marriages to Orson Welles and Prince Ali Khan drew enormous attention, while the industry repeatedly pushed her toward the same seductive roles. The public saw glamour. Behind that glamour were increasingly difficult personal struggles. Hayworth battled alcoholism, and later she developed early-onset Alzheimer's disease. Her final film appearance came in The Wrath of God in 1972, providing a bittersweet ending to a career that had once seemed almost impossibly bright. Yet Rita Hayworth's image never truly disappeared. Her famous 36-inch figure, her hair, her smile, and especially that moment in Gilda continued appearing in posters, dorm rooms, and popular culture long after her career had ended. But perhaps the most important part of her story is the contrast. Hollywood created Rita Hayworth as an image. Rita Hayworth herself had to live as a human being. And the next star proved that even the most celebrated beauty could reject Hollywood's expectations and choose a completely different life. Actor 11 Ava Gardner. Ava Gardner was never interested in behaving like the Hollywood fantasy people created around her. She came from a North Carolina sharecropping family, far removed from the polished world of studio glamour. Her entrance into Hollywood was almost accidental. A photograph taken in a New York storefront caught the attention of MGM, and the studio brought her west even though she had no acting experience. At first, Hollywood didn't know what to do with her. She was given roles that emphasized appearance more than ability. But then the killers changed everything. Suddenly, the camera wasn't simply photographing Ava Gardner, it was capturing a performer with a smoky voice, dangerous confidence, and a screen presence that could dominate an entire scene. Her private life became almost as famous as her films. Relationships with Mickey Rooney, Artie Shaw, and Frank Sinatra kept her name in newspapers, but Gardner herself remained remarkably blunt about who she was. She smoked. She swore. And when she believed she deserved better pay, she negotiated without apologizing for it. That attitude separated her from the carefully managed image Hollywood expected from its leading women. And then came the films that proved she was more than a beautiful face. The Barefoot Contessa showcased her commanding screen presence. Magambo brought an Oscar nomination. On the Beach and The Night of the Iguana revealed an actress capable of much greater emotional depth than her early roles suggested. Gardner's beauty may have opened the door, but her performances kept it open. Later, tax problems helped push her toward London, where she found something increasingly rare in her life: anonymity. Away from Hollywood's constant attention, she adopted corgis and spent time mentoring younger actors. Near the end of her life, when asked what she would change, Gardner reportedly offered a remarkably simple response: she had done the best she could with what she had. That statement may explain her appeal better than any glamorous photograph ever could. She never pretended to be perfect. She simply remained Ava Gardner. And that combination of beauty, independence, and blunt honesty kept her name alive long after the studio system that created her had disappeared. But the next woman turned her own image into something even more powerful. She became a global symbol of sensuality, and then walked away from Hollywood to fight for a cause she considered more important. Actor 12 Brigitte Bardot. Brigitte Bardot did not simply become famous. She became a cultural phenomenon. Her career began with modeling and small acting opportunities, including a role in Act of Love with Kirk Douglas. But everything changed when Roger Vadim directed her in And God Created Woman. The film transformed Bardot into an international sensation. She became the archetype of the modern European sex symbol, and newspapers followed her every move. Her appearances on the French Riviera generated almost as much attention as her films, while her distinctive, tousled hairstyle inspired countless imitations. But the fame that millions of people dreamed about eventually became suffocating for Bardot. At just 39, she made a decision that shocked the entertainment world. She quit acting. Instead of continuing to build her career around celebrity, Bardot redirected her influence toward animal rights. She established the Brigitte Bardot Foundation and devoted herself to activism. That decision changed the way her legacy was understood. For years, critics had reduced her acting to her appearance and the sex kitten persona created around her. But later reassessments drew attention to the more nuanced performances found in films such as Le Mépris and Viva Maria. Her career therefore became a study in contradiction. The woman Hollywood and the media wanted to turn into an eternal fantasy was determined to control what happened next. Her influence did not disappear when she stopped making movies. It changed direction. Bardot continued using her public profile to advocate for animals and, according to the source, lobby French lawmakers. The same charisma that once filled movie theaters was now being used to push political and social causes. That makes her story particularly remarkable. Many stars spend their entire lives trying to remain famous. Bardot became famous enough to walk away, and powerful enough to make that decision matter. Her 36-inch figure helped create an image, but her convictions eventually became more important than the image itself. And the next actress took another route entirely. She entered cinema after winning a beauty contest, but once the cameras arrived, she fought to control something far more important than her appearance: her own voice. Actor 13 Claudia Cardinali. Claudia Cardinali's entrance into cinema began with a beauty contest. She won a competition for the most beautiful Italian girl in Tunisia, and the attention generated by that victory brought acting opportunities she initially resisted. The studios, however, were persistent. Eventually, Cardinali entered the film world and quickly became one of European cinema's most recognizable stars. Her breakthrough came through major films including The Leopard and Federico Fellini's 8½. Her Mediterranean beauty made her a natural target for publicity campaigns, but Cardinali wanted her work to be about more than a photograph. One of her battles was over authenticity. She insisted on dubbing her own lines, fighting for the ability to preserve her own expression rather than simply allowing the studio system to manipulate her voice. That detail reveals something essential about her career. Cardinali was never content to be merely presented. She wanted to perform. Her filmography eventually moved across genres and national cinemas. She appeared in spaghetti westerns, including Once Upon a Time in the West, while also working in ambitious European productions such as Werner Herzog's Fitzcarraldo. She demonstrated that the same actress could move between art house cinema and mainstream spectacle without abandoning her identity. There was another dimension to Cardinali's life as well. She became fluent in 4 languages and later served as a UNESCO Goodwill Ambassador for women's rights. That evolution, from beauty contest winner to internationally respected actress and humanitarian figure, makes her career much larger than the image that first made her famous. Now in her 80s, she rarely appears publicly. But cinema has a long memory. Whenever her image crosses a screen, the elegance remains unmistakable: a shawl moving in the wind, a determined expression, and a performer whose presence could fill a frame without demanding attention. And if Claudia Cardinali proved that a star could control her own voice, the next actress showed what happened when a Hollywood star decided she would rather control her own life.